ordained.
My name is Sarah Derrick. I am the pastor for Care and Outreach at Faith Lutheran Church in Flower Mound, Texas. I have been ordained for about 2 months. I was ordained August 16th of 2019.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's exciting that this is brand new.
It is.
How fun to have you talking with us when this is all a new journey for you. So start out, Sarah, by telling us about your call to ministry.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Lutheran Church. My dad is a Lutheran pastor, and so I grew up seeing what he did on Sundays, but also seeing other women doing what he did on Sundays. And when I was very young, I wanted to be what all young girls want to be. I wanted to be the first female pope. That was my early childhood aspiration. And over time, that became being a Lutheran pastor, and I landed on that as being an okay call. And so that's what I wanted to do when I was young. I would go hospital visiting with my dad. I would come home from church and sing parts of the liturgy at home. So it was something that I think from a very early age, I felt a call to, even if I wasn't necessarily articulating it in the way of a call. It was something I knew I had energy for and was excited by, and saw people who looked like me doing it. So as I got older and moved through school, the articulation of that call kind of changed and moved. For a while, I dabbled in health sciences, but quickly learned that that was not where I was being led. And then through working at a Lutheran camp in Asheville, North Carolina, doing the Young Adults in Global Mission program, those are things that really helped me see myself in the church as a pastor even more clearly. When I was serving as a Yagam in Malaysia, the church that I was a part of there, the Basel Christian Church of Malaysia, I was there at a time when the largest church that was in the city in Kota Kinabalu, where I was, it just so happened that all of the folks who were in leadership at that time were women. And to see the kinds of ministry that they were doing, it just made it so clear that it was something that I could do and that I was being called to do. And to have them as leaders and role models was everything. Mm-hmm.
So another one of our questions dovetails on that, which is what women have inspired you in ministry?
Yeah. So I saw women, like I said, in leadership growing up, but the first woman who helped me really understand what it was to have a mentor and friend and companion in this journey was a college professor, Dr. Rebecca Davis. She's a Presbyterian pastor and teacher. And she saw gifts in me before I saw them in myself. And she had a way of helping me come to know those things about myself that were gifts from God, that were being called out of me for the church, for the sake of the world. So she's one who, I talked to her on the phone yesterday. She's someone who I've been out of college now for 10 years and, not 10 years, but I've been out of college for some time now. And she's someone who I know I can still call, and she'll talk to me about things that are going on and encourage and just hear things that are happening in my life. Yeah.
And have you met any women that your presence has inspired, being a woman in leadership? It's new yet for you, but the women in Malaysia, girls in Sunday school or confirmation.
Yeah, I worked as a pastoral resident at a church in Chicago through my final year of seminary. And there was a little girl in that church who I was one of two on that team. So the senior pastor was a man, and I was serving in a pastoral role as a woman. And she was, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years old when I was there. And being able to see her kind of, when I was up front leading with a prayer, she would stand in the church with her hands out. And I know that's everything. That's why I'm here, because I saw people who looked like me. And so I know that there are folks who have seen me in leadership who that has meant something, but I also know that there are others who have seen me or will see me and it will do something for them who I might not know.
Thank you. I wonder if female images of God shape your theology or your ministry right now at all?
Yeah, even though I grew up in the ELCA, having an expansive understanding of who God is and what language we can use for God was something that I really wasn't exposed to until my life as a young adult. And so I've found a lot of freedom in being able to explore different language that reminds me that the experience that we have of God, it can't be confined to any one of us. And it gives me permission to imagine how God can be at work in the many, many, many people around me, folks who look like me, but especially folks who don't look like me. It's something that I continue to work towards introducing to whatever congregation I'm serving, and I find that it catches people's ears and people are curious about it and sometimes kind of opposed to it, but when given the opportunity to continue practicing, it opens us. It never constricts us, but it continues to open us.
What is one of the most significant experiences or moments, sort of God moments, that you've had where the presence of God was real, palpable, or real for you?
Oh, there are many. Let's see. Specifically in ministry or just in life?
In life or ministry?
Yeah. So one of the stories that I tell often, folks in my congregation have already heard this story and I haven't even been there a month. But there was the woman who I lived with in Malaysia named Mrs. Song. She was a 75-year-old woman in the church who it was her vocation to take folks in and host them in her home, whatever season they were passing through in their life. And so being in Malaysia was the first time I had really been far away from home. I went to college an hour away, but this was my first time away. And I woke up one morning and I had a high fever. I was very sick. And I knew I couldn't go to work that day. And I walked downstairs and I was crying and upset. And Mrs. Song came out of the kitchen and asked me why I was crying. And I told her I was sick. And she came up to me and she put both of her hands on my shoulder and she said, "Hey, don't cry. I love you. Now go upstairs and get in bed and I'm going to bring you something to eat." And that was a moment when I was assured of God's presence with me. I was assured of God's family that spans this world, that we're gifted with in times when it's unexpected, times when we're scared, times when we don't know where home is or what home feels like, that God reaches us in unexpected ways.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. If you met somebody today in your congregation or in the church who was considering ministry, what advice would you give them?
I would encourage them to remain connected to a community and find ways of being in community wherever this journey takes you. Where I thought I would be at the end of seminary when I started seminary is really different from where I am right now. And I think that that's only because of folks who have been a part of my community who have helped me imagine where God is calling me to be, and who challenge me whenever I think I really have it figured out and know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And for the times when it's really hard and frustrating and you don't want to do it anymore, that community is there to hear those times too and to walk with you through that. So I think just having that sense of community and finding it and not being afraid to create it if it's not there currently, don't be afraid to reach out and find folks who can help accompany you.
And what would you say sustains you spiritually? Do you have any specific practices or anything that you find really is your source of sustenance?
Yeah, a few things. One has become my dog Winston, and more than that, going on walks with him and just having a time of being outside, walking, being in nature, listening to the wind and the leaves, or to the sun and the crickets, as it is in Texas, whatever it is, to get outside of myself, to get outside of my head and walk and be intentional in that time. But a big thing that has been a love of mine always, but has recently become more of like a spiritual journey and a spiritual practice, has been baking and finding time to be in the kitchen. And really thinking about where the things have come from that I'm using and where then the things that I make can go. And in a world and in a profession that feels really chaotic a lot of times, to be able to come and work with my hands and reflect and pray and then give something beautiful to a neighbor is something that has become really meaningful for me.